Hey, how's it going,
Hello.
Nathaniel?
Good. How about you, Patrick?
Good. So I'm not Patrick. Let me change my name. I'm Drew.
Oh, you're Drew. All right.
I love some of that account. How's it going?
Pretty good.
You getting ready for the holidays?
Yeah, getting ready for the holidays. You know, almost here. So
I know.
yeah.
It's coming fast. I'm like the rush to try to get everything done so I can like relax on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Right.
Yeah. So what can I help you with?
So our company actually just bought the M2 as our first entry into CNC routers.
Right on.
And I've been setting it up over the course of the last week, and a few little things here and there that we're trying to finish off before we finalize and are able to turn it on. But figured I'd hop on this call and see what was going on with it. And if it is just the two of us ending up, then cool. But things like,
So what's up?
I don't know where in the directions it was, but like this piece of self-adhesive foam, I haven't been able to figure out what it's for.
So yeah, so that's for sound dampening. So some of the kits got those, and then I think in the later instructions, I think that sound foam was removed from like what's in the box. So
Okay.
when you mount it to the wall, you can put the foam between the brackets and the wall.
Okay.
That can help with like wall vibrations, but I've tested it without it, and I haven't really noticed a big difference. Because like I have them on here, but then we have it on another wall, and we didn't really notice a difference, so we took it out.
And I've got it mounted on solid concrete wall, so
They're fine. Yeah.
it's not going to be vibrating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Cameron.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Had a little progress since our call last week, so that was good.
Awesome. Yeah.
I ended up doing the metal bar and moving it up 24 inches.
That helped?
It helped a lot, yeah.
Awesome.
So I just did a few squares in the center. Now I just need to actually run the full sheet and see how it is across all the edges.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
That's great news.
Yep, so appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So does having the height of the crossbar higher above the cutting platform help increase the accuracy?
So Cameron he has a 12-foot beam, if I remember right.
Okay.
Yep.
So it helps to have it a little bit higher because it's basically two right-angled triangles that are working. So you want to make sure that they can interact and they have enough space. So if it's kind of squished, then it'll kind of squish your cuts. That's why it needs to be at least 18 inches between the tops where the chains come off of the motor. If I can point right there.
Yeah.
Where it comes off to the top of your wasteboard right there. So that has to be at least 18 inches. And then if it's bigger, like if it's a 12-foot beam and he has a longer chain, then it needs to be at least 24 inches just so it can give you that wider space because you're like expanding your area, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll say what I had before was I only had a 10-foot beam, and my chain was only up about 10 inches. Which I thought was what I was following the guide, probably the older one. And my cuts were, up to about half an inch off, squished in one direction. And so the recommendation was to move it up to at least the 18. But when I did that, I moved to the 12-foot bar at the same time, so.
Okay. Yeah. So the instructions that came on the USB for building the frame, I think are older instructions.
They're bad.
And I printed those out and built it to that. So before I turn it on, I think I'm going to move the beam up because it's not the 18 inches.
Yeah, we found out that was flashed. That's our demo instructions that we had before we launched it. And we found out that it was getting flashed and put on the SD card or put on the USBs instead of the most updated one. So the most updated one is on our resources page. I actually have an even newer one that has some spelling updates and stuff that I'm about to update today. So I can post that link if you want to go to it. And it has all the stuff. Let me get the link for you and put it right here in the side. So it's the M2 resources, and it has the newest version of the guide, and it has all the call outs for all this stuff. Because which I imagine for the M2 itself, like when you built it, did you find the new version of the guide?
I found the new version, and I checked out what was on the USB stick, and I figured since it came with the device.
Yeah, it was our mistake.
Yeah. So
yeah, I have a box of them here. We've been changing them before they ship out. So like I have a whole box here of them. Because we figured out what was wrong, and it was just somebody, sometimes we forget to check boxes, and somebody forgot to check a box, and we're fixing it. I apologize for the confusion that it caused. It's a lot of moving parts. So
yeah.
But we have the updated guide. It just didn't get on the USB drive. So that's what I'm making sure gets on it.
Yeah, I think I saw something on your website, and I was looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is totally different than what I've ever seen. Even the 3D things of putting it together were a lot different, if I recall.
Yeah.
I remember the first one, it wasn't too hard, but it was definitely like, I think this is where this goes.
Yeah, it's like, this seems to be where, yeah, exactly. I'm sorry about that.
No.
That's something that, I'm personally upset at myself and about that kind of thing, because I know it's frustrating. And that's the last thing that we want this fun tool to be. We want it to be fun, and you putting it together and troubleshooting is fun, not frustrating because the instructions suck.
Yeah. Right. Is there any other big changes from the old manual to the new to be aware of if I haven't read the new one, that are differences, sizing wise?
Most of the ones are things like that top beam and making sure that that is in there, making sure that your wasteboard is completely level with your top beam, that they are level with themselves too on each side. And then making sure that if you've got your M2 built, then that's good. Those instructions haven't really changed. They just become more clear and easier. So those instructions are still the same. Most of the updates came to the frame. And then just people using them and like community input and things like that, be like, hey, this worked better, like changing where the nails go and stuff like that from just like community input. Because that's one of the cool things about it being DIY is there's such an amazing community of people arranging stuff and moving stuff around. So we've incorporated a lot of that into the newer version too. So most of it has to do with the guide.
How critical is the angle of the wasteboard and the feet being pushed out from the wall to the base of it?
It needs to be 15%. Degree. So like that's what the angle of these mounts are.
And what I did is I pushed them up against the mounts, clipped them on, and just kind of look.
Yeah. So like that's, if you've clipped it on the mount, you're good. And just try to make sure that when it's clipped, it's level on each side after you've clipped it, and then that should be pretty close to being 15 degrees because it's set at 15. So if you set that and made sure it's level, you should be good to go.
Okay.
Have you cut anything, Cameron?
So when I first did it, I was a little off. It was right before Halloween, and my kid needed a few props for his costume. So we did all that, and then that's when I started taking it apart going because I knew it was off.
What'd you cut for him?
He was a big mac and cheese bowl, so I cut him a huge fork.
Nice.
And then we cut out the craft logo in plastic, or like a thin plastic, to wrap around this lampshade that he wore around him.
That's awesome. Yeah, right on.
So yeah, that was like the first day I got it set up the night before, and then we did that the next morning.
And that's awesome too. It doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, so it was like as long as it's cutting, like you're rocking.
Right. It was that was it. I'm like, I just tuned this up on the sander, no big deal. But I knew I had to go back and fix it. I really want to do some cabinet work on it.
Oh yeah.
And so
I know some cabinet work. Yeah, just the big thing is those upcut and downcut bits, and like swapping those out and doing different G codes. That'll help you make cabinetry.
Right. So yeah, that's my next step. I knew I wanted to get this dialed in just for that. So.
Sweet.
Does it handle downscut bits well?
Yeah, you can do both. Yeah, so you can
Okay.
you can swap them out and then and cut, and then it'll either pull the material out or push the material in, or
Right.
you can do like the blended one that does both.
Yeah.
And I know from cabinetry, that's the people that use it for furniture. That's what they love. And the cool thing about it being um, so accurate is once you get it all dialed in, you can just have like a separate G code. So like when I switch the bits out, I have I just have the G code set with the same origin, and then like when that G code's over, well then I change the bit and then start the new one, and then it'll go and cut in the same space. So if you need to do like multiple cuts or multiple bit stuff, then it'll go across the same one and just repeat the same pattern. Because even if it's off by like a half a millimeter or something, well it's going to be off every time. So that kind of it can compensate for that as you're cutting stuff out. So Nathaniel, got any other questions about your setup or getting going?
No questions. One of the things that I did that I think is kind of cool is for the Z-axis cord, instead of like running it down underneath the bottom, I put a pivot arm up above on the ceiling that'll kind of let it swing back and forth without dragging.
Yeah, I've done that before too.
Okay.
Like and seeing people do that. We have it at our shop. Joel has one like that, and it's super cool. But it was kind of like you need to get more parts to do that, so that's why we didn't make that in like the standard frame. Because you can kind of just go about that however you want. But I think it's really awesome because then it's like kind of up and out of the way. Because I step on mine sometimes because it's right next to this. So, but like hanging out, it would be like, like over here or whatever. But I totally think that's a great idea. And that's an awesome add-on. We've been thinking about making like a list of like fun add-ons and cool stuff that people use. And like suggested things to get, like chain lubricant and like Loctite. To help like keep the bolts in and stuff like that you'd run into like after you've used it for a bit. And things that you want to like upgrade to basically.
Well, like I keep a spray dry like Teflon lube around the shop. So before anything has ever come close to the chains, I sprayed them down with Teflon lube.
Nice. Yeah, and then because the chains over time they'll get a little crunchy, and then that can cause slippage. And then if it's cutting and if you're cutting something big and then it goes like clook and it does like a little like slip because one of the links was kind of stuck, then it'll make a little grr in your cut. And if you're doing something like cabinetry, that's a big deal. So yeah, that's a good plan. Yeah, awesome.
I guess, do you have any suggestions for next methods of checking accuracy? I know there was a couple in there, and I've heard some people talk on the last call about doing the whole board or something like that.
So the beta version that's been beta is like this close to being in the Windows and Microsoft stores. And when it's out, it has an entirely new and improved calibration sequence. So instead of jogging it across and measuring or cutting and then measuring the cuts, you actually go through an entire process, and then it will help you calculate it, and it'll do what's called Holy calibration, where it'll cut in different spots.
That's what I remember them saying. Yeah, okay.
Have you done that in the beta?
No, I haven't, and I'm wondering. I saw the beta link posted last week. Is that pretty reasonable to upgrade to at this point?
You can, but we haven't made the videos and stuff for it yet until it gets all in the app stores and that kind of stuff. So what you have to do is you have to uninstall the old version of Makerverse completely from your computer.
Okay.
And then you have to upgrade the firmware of your M2, and then you can use the beta.
Okay, so firmware first, then the Makerverse.
Yes, and I haven't made all of the videos, the videos for people that aren't experienced with Arduino, to update the firmware and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to do all that as soon as it's like perfectly ready, and we know it's going to be, this is the App Store version, because there's still some small tweaks and stuff that are going in as it's going through like the App Store verification processes and stuff. So as soon as that's ready, then I'm going to make that video and make like a document guide that's like step by step how to flash the firmware, because the newer ones will have them flashed already, but the everybody who wants to upgrade, you have to flash your firmware with Arduino, and then you have to uninstall Makerverse and then install the new version from the App Store. And then once you do that, then you're good and you're ready to rock.
Okay.
And then future updates can actually be through Makerverse, so you won't have to go through a separate Arduino to do that. You could actually upgrade it in Makerverse, which is something that we're really excited about, because then you can just say like, update the firmware on my M2, and it will do it inside of Makerverse, but it's a break fix version because there's so many changes that you have to completely uninstall the old version. So yeah, there's a bunch of changes to that, but that should be, it should be coming out in the next like 2 weeks, probably like right around Christmas. So, and then that new version will come out that's got some different calibrations.
I got bad news for you. Christmas is this week, so.
So it's either gonna be this week or next week. I think it's gonna be
right.
before the end of the year. I know. Well, Christmas has come fast. That's for sure.
I know. It's amazing for this year that all of a sudden Christmas is here. Like, hey, we've been doing nothing, and now we got Christmas here.
I can't promise it's gonna be here by Christmas, but fingers crossed it'll be around the holiday season.
Perfect.
Mars is here. What's up, Mars?
Hi. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm from West Africa, Gambia, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, let me just see how to put this.
Do you have an M2 or a Maslow?
Yeah, I got an M2 actually.
Awesome.
I just put it together. I ordered it like 6 months ago from my courier partner in the UK, and they just brought it over like a few days ago.
Awesome.
I put it together, but I'm having some trouble with the calibration.
Okay.
It's driving me mad. Yeah.
It's kind of tricky to get started. So
man.
What kind of issues are you having?
Right now, like during the calibration, when I press the up arrow, it goes down instead of going up.
Okay, so are you using Makerverse or are you using CNC.js, which was the software that came on the USB?
I'm using Makerverse.
Okay, so that sounds like that you're, which version of Makerverse are you using?
I downloaded the one from Maker Made. I think it's the 1.06.
Okay, cool. So that means more than likely that there's a G-code command that is swapped that shouldn't be swapped. So when you're moving your motors around, like probably your X and Y motors over here, they need to be switched.
I need to turn them around.
Yeah, like just swap the plugs in your do board, because I think that's probably why it's going up and down. Because if it doesn't have a G-code command, then it's kind of it's giving you the wrong readings more than likely. So that's probably why. And then the next thing is to make sure that the connections are seated all the way in. Because if they're not seated all the way in, then that can cause it to do some weird stuff when it moves around. And then once you have all those connections seated in and you know that it's correct in the do board, then you want to make sure your home is always in the exact center. And
the centering I've managed to do.
Offsets.
Yeah, like for example, if I go left to right, it goes like I would select 200 millimeters, go left. Yeah. Okay. It starts going the 200 millimeters. It actually gets there, but when it's going there, it like also goes up a little bit, like it goes in an arc. Okay,
so that could be a measurement issue too. So there's a couple things that cause it to arc. So it's kind of like one of the things that's tough about digital manufacturing is like trying to narrow down the issue and what it could be. So I like to start with the like mechanical and physical stuff first, and then kind of work backwards. So first off is the frame. So when we're thinking about the frame and building it, there's a couple things that we have to keep in mind. First is that you have at least 18 inches between the top of your wasteboard right here and the top of your chain, which is like, if I can point to it, I got to get my stuff right at the top of the chain right there. So it needs to be 18 inches between these 2 points.
So like the top of the sprocket, right?
Yes, the top of the sprocket.
Yeah,
so that has to be 18 inches from the top of the sprocket to the top of the wasteboard. And that's for the right angle triangles that it uses to do its programming. So that's the first thing. So that's the first thing that we got to confirm. And then in Makerverse, those measurements have to be exact. So if it is, like 18 inches and 3/16, then you want to type in 18 inches and 3/16 to make sure that it is exact for its measurements and when it's moving around. The second thing is to make sure that your wasteboard and your top beam are level with each other and the ground. So you want to use a level on each side above each one of the mounts, on that mount and the other mount, to make sure that they're level. And that can cause it to kind of go up too. When I first built mine, it was off by like 2 millimeters, and all my cuts did that. And I was like, what is wrong? And then it turned out I had my top mount was just a little bit off. So you want to make it like tiny little bits matter a lot, like when it's cutting across, because you're cutting such a big space. You know, you're cutting like 4x8. So when you're cutting that, you got to make sure that those are on there. And then the third thing is to make sure that your angle is 15 degrees. So when it's clamped to your mounts, you have like the larger side of the mount on the bottom, so it's like this.
Correct.
So you want, those are the three big things on your frame that you want to make sure. You got to make sure it's at least 18 inches. You want to make sure that the 15-degree angle's there and that it's level with itself and the ground. So like it's the same distance between each one of these mounts on each side, on this side and on this side, and that it's level with the ground. So like, because that
what I did notice a little bit is the 2x4s that I used. I did get the carpenters to like plane them and pretty much straighten them, but in Africa things are really, really not as they seem. So I was thinking, could I like, instead of using
that's here in America too, man. Like it doesn't matter. Wood is
really difficult. It drives me mad. But like, I was thinking maybe if I use some hollow tubes like out of steel, would that also work?
So you could, but the main thing is just making sure that your level, like your board, like under the motors is level. Because even mine is bowed a little bit. It kind of bows out a little, but because it's level on the bottom, that's the most important part. So you just want to make sure that you get it as level as possible.
That's what I noticed. The top beam, it's like bowing, like it like comes out a bit.
Yeah. So if it's pushing the motors out, you can kind of like make sure that the motors are aligned and they're straight with each other, and then they're straight too. And that also goes in with the wasteboard. So you know, like plywood and MDF is never flat. No. So like the new version of the guide, and so the guide that came with your M2, we were just talking about this, is probably the older version. So did you go to our website and download a new guide?
I actually downloaded the one directly from the website, and
okay, great. So
I've been following the YouTube videos actually to put it together.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So with that frame, it helps to have a brace in the back. So having like the new version that we have is like 4 feet across, like 4 different footers, and then the beam that goes across on the top and the bottom. So it's really like bolted down. So your wasteboard is as flat as possible, and then you can screw in your material a whole bunch too. Because if it's bowed out a little bit, that's also going to cause it to arc, like as it's moving, because it's like following. It's like if it's curved, it's like following that curvature, and that curvature will cause it to bow. So that's one of the things that's tough about having a CNC machine that's this large. It's like there's all kinds of those little things that have to do with the frame that can do kind of weird stuff. So that'd be the first thing that I would do is like check your frame and make sure that all the stuff in the frame is cutting good.
I wanted to ask one other question. Sorry, I've been like hugging it a bit.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
You know, like the nail that we use for the chain, the one that is first set, it's 31 inches to where the sprocket on the spring is, right?
We changed that.
You've changed that?
We have, yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna say, like the machine needs to be almost above the wasteboard for that to happen.
Yeah, we changed it so it's 6 inches in, and then an inch from the top, or the bottom. I don't remember. But it's I think it's 6 inches in from.
Yes, that is correct. But you know, that's where you put the nail in, right?
Yes.
And then what I'm talking about is that the spring sprocket, you know, the center spring that holds the two chains together. How far should that sprocket be to that nail from like this side?
Oh, okay. So that's kind of variable. So it's kind of where the important thing is to get it to where it's like mine. Mine's a little too loose because I have a smaller frame. This is only a 4x4 frame, but on the larger one, the spring you want it to be tight most of the time. So
yeah, it's tight.
The problem is if the nails are like too far in, then when it goes like all the way to the top, it might slack down so much that it can kind of get in the way. And then the same thing goes if it's too stretched out, then as it goes all the way down to the bottom corners, then that spring might be like pulled all the way to the ends. So having those nails in there, the reason that we keep them as nails is because if they were like carriage bolts and they were like bolted in there, if something went wrong and it like went down too far or something, it could like rip your frame apart, because these motors are like insanely strong. They're like worm gear motors that could like, they are strong enough to just tear through the wood and just rip it to pieces.
I built one of my motor mounts.
Fail safe. If something goes wrong, the nails would come out without it just like collapsing in on itself like a black hole, like you know. Because we've experienced that in the testing. It's like, well, we can't put a screw or a bolt in because it'll just like burp if something goes wrong. So it's not ideal to have the nails. It's kind of like the best of a situation that we're trying to come up with a better idea. But the main thing is just making sure that the spring is taut and it's not pulling too tight when it goes down to those bottom corners. So if it's going down to the bottom corners and it's too tight, then you can move your nail and kind of experiment like moving the nails around for you to see like where they want to be. That same thing goes too for Cameron. What you're, you might have to move your nail around by increasing like that distance if it's really getting tight and like you see it kind of pulling and bowing on the nails. That's something to keep in mind too, because Cameron like increased the distance on his.
So since I went with the metal bar, I couldn't use the nail anymore. So I took a bunch of baling wire, wrapped around the motor mount, and just tie off the chain, so I can easily move that back and forth now.
And that works?
Yeah, it seems to work so far.
Cool.
I was saying that I actually bent my first motor mount by having the thing go kind of crazy. And I was behind it looking at stuff, and next thing I know, it's like pulling itself over, and it pulled the motor mount down. So yeah, they're pretty strong.
Yeah, the gears are really tough. Yeah.
That's
it's
insane.
a bit to get calibrated. Like I would say that we're trying to cut down on the calibration. So we have a new software that we were talking about to try to cut down on the calibration time, because it probably takes an hour and a half or 2 hours to build it, and then probably another maybe hour to build the frame. And then the calibration can take a couple hours too, to like sit down and go through it. So we're trying to get that process to where it's more streamlined, because and you're not just repeating the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. So there's a new version of the program that we're coming out with that I was just talking to them about. That should be out over the break. It's the beta version's out now, but it'll be in the Windows and Mac stores that you can download. And you'll uninstall the old version of Makerverse and install the new one, and then you'll flash your firmware to the newest version on your M2, and then it has an entirely different calibration sequence. So it'll walk you through steps and help you to calculate things like the center of your wasteboard and stuff like that too, because you have to have the area of your cutting area measured to the exact measurement too, like down to the millimeter.
Plywood, they're not so all the time so square as well, Up will be like 240, and then the down will be 244. It depends.
Yeah, I know exactly. So I mean, for that one, I would just go for the middle of it. So like, go to the middle.
X in the middle.
Yeah, but you want to have that material at the same, because if it gets too close to the top, one of the things that that we've found is it might start getting weird and skipping if it gets too. If you kind of get out, if it thinks it's outside of its build area, then it might kind of start skipping or getting confused. So you want to make sure that it's always cutting inside of its work area. And that can be tricky too. I mean, that's one of the fun things and challenging things about like a CNC kit is there's like a bunch of steps to get it going. But once you get it going, it's awesome and it feels good.
I'm completely excited. I can't wait. It's been like 3 days. I work at the same time. We have a big company here. And I'm working, and like at the same time, I'm like building it at the back of my office in an area. And then as soon as I'm not busy in the office, I just go back there and I call a few people to come help me do stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm just like waiting to start cutting, literally.
And I would say just start cutting stuff out too, and then experimenting with it. Just like if you have stuff like that doesn't have to be an exact measurement, if like not building furniture or something, you just want to build something fun, then just start cutting stuff and experiment with cutting and just learning how it works. Even if it's not perfectly calibrated, just cut stuff out. Start cutting stuff, and then that's going to help you to learn more about the calibration and what things need to fix and things like that, and just dive in and have fun with it.
Okay, here. I did try and like I bought some of the designs on like Maker Made, by the way, just because I was preparing. And when I tried to upload the G code, and then I press like start, yeah, and I do that without the drill bit just to see if the machine will move around.
Yeah.
And it gives error 1. Let me just read it to you. It says dot type SVG public, and then it just says error 1 expected command letter in brackets.
So does it say that it's connected inside of Makerverse?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I can move the machine around.
So you can move the machine. Okay, that's the first thing that we want to check. And then what G code did you use to download it? Did you get it from did you download the G code itself from Maker Made?
Yes, yeah, I did.
Okay, so is it for the M2 or is it for the Maslow? Because the Maslow is another CNC machine that we have.
Good question.
It might be the G code for that, and it has a different do board. So the control board is different. So that might be where that error is coming from. I don't know off the top of my head what that error 1 is.
So it might be that I bought the wrong stuff for the wrong machine.
That might be it. That's what might get. But you can use Easel, or so you can take the file that you purchased and then put it into Easel and then export it for your machine and make sure that the G code is exported properly.
I can do it from where?
From Easel. So easel.inventables.com.
That actually brings up a question that I have. So our company uses SolidWorks for doing our 3D design. So can you use the SolidWorks CAM to output your G code for cutting on the M2?
Yes, I haven't used it on SolidWorks. I've used it on Fusion 360 though. But yeah, you can export it. You just want to make sure that all of your cut depths and your bit sizes and your size and all of that is correct. And you want to make sure that it's just generic G code. So when you go to cut through, like in the manual, it talks about Easel and walks you through the steps on how to cut something in Easel. So it's those same types of steps. You want to make sure that you've got all of those RPM settings and all of that set up to the defaults for the M2. And that's definitely something that that we need to release some more stuff on, and because I know that there's community members that use SolidWorks. There's some good videos on Fusion, but I don't think there's anything that I've seen about SolidWorks yet and using the CAM in SolidWorks.
I mean, our designer knows SolidWorks. He's a SolidWorks like pro. He really uses it, and up until now we haven't had any CAM software that we've been using. And so the SolidWorks CAM integrates really well into the workflow with SolidWorks CAD.
Yeah. So
ideally for us, because we're already in that ecosystem, it would make sense to use that. And a hobbyist who's getting into this and they're like, no, I'm not going to pay $1,200 a year for a subscription to SolidWorks.
Yeah.
It would make sense for them to use some sort of free program like Easel. I'm just trying to figure out if that is an ideal path for us since we have this subscription already. Or
totally. Yeah, because so Easel's free, and we talk about Easel for that reason that you just said, because it's free and it's for makers, so then you don't have to go and buy other software to run your machine, and it'll totally work. And you can use it, and you'll figure out like the best settings and cutting small stuff to figure out like what dial in those settings for your G code, and then it's more robust than Easel too, so you'll have more settings and more things that you can change, which is cool. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You bet. So what do you think, Mars? Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I have some stuff to try out tomorrow. I think the top of the sprocket to the wasteboard, mine is short. It's not 18 inches.
That could be the culprit then. So if it's not tall enough, that could totally be it.
Especially if you got a unit 6 months ago. It's probably on the same instructions I did. I did mine back in September also. So.
Yeah, it took forever to get here, honestly. Oh man.
Did you have to get it from an importer and then they import it in to you? So it didn't come directly from us. It like
No, so we have like a courier partner who's in the UK. Whenever we need stuff that is not available here, they have like air freight services. So I just send them what I want, and then they order it from wherever in the world, and it gets to their store in UK, and then they just ship it out to me here.
Oh, okay.
So they ordered it from you guys ages ago, I think in August or July, something like that. And then due to COVID also, it's been hell here. We have like one flight a week coming into this country.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's a really small country. It's the smallest country in mainland Africa. So yeah, it just got here like last week, Friday.
Well, that's awesome that it got there and you're diving into it though.
Well,
yeah, now you can play with it over the break.
I want to see it working. I'm like, I'm on it. I'm trying to get it to work.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, I think checking out that stuff that we talked about will be a good way to get it rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I will definitely. And
Yeah,
if anything, I'll join the next meeting again too.
Yeah, totally. So I'll be here next Tuesday too.
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, so we're not reading our Facebook messages right now over the break, but we are doing our support emails. So you can send us an email and support. And besides the holidays on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, we're in those, so you can still get a hold of us. But okay. We just are not on Facebook right now, like over the holiday break, because it's a lot.
Yeah, of course, we need to enjoy a bit. This year has been hectic for everyone.
Yeah, it's crazy for everybody. Definitely with holidays and COVID and everything else. It's definitely looking forward to relaxing a little bit.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you guys, and I wish everyone a happy holidays.
You bet. You too.
To you too.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Hop in. What time is it there right now?
It is 5:30 p.m.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so then that's not too bad. So yeah, if you got any questions or anything, hop in next week or send us an email, support@makermade.com, and we'll get you going.
Thank you. Have a good holiday, guys. See you guys around.
You too. See ya.
I think if you got a couple more minutes, the software, huh?
I said I'm here till noon.
Okay. Yeah. The software brings up a good question. I mean, obviously, just kind of playing with easel to begin with, just to make simple stuff and import. What would be the next step up as a software option that's pretty easy to kind of get around, learn? Is that Fusion, or I've done SketchUp for woodwork, but
okay. I don't know if SketchUp does.
It doesn't. There's a plugin you have to use, and it's not very friendly, I've heard.
That's how it is with 3D printing too. It's kind of wonky because it's made to be like awesome architecture renderings and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like not really made for prototyping.
Right.
So if you're gonna make something, so there's the process. So you have like easel is the CAM software. It's basically like how you're converting that G code. You're converting your file to the G code. So you can use easel, you can use Fusion, you can use SolidWorks. There's a multitude of different programs that you can use to convert that. But you can keep using easel for your G code generator because you can just import your finished file.
Right.
So if you want to make something from scratch, I'd recommend something like Illustrator or like Inkscape or GIMP or something along those lines. That both Inkscape and GIMP are free. And then you got like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop or anything where you are drawing like 2D lines. I mean, you could literally like draw. We're working on something called Instapath, where you can actually draw stuff and then be able to import pictures of stuff for it to work really well. But it's like 90% there, and it's in beta too, to where you can actually like draw something on a piece of paper and then take a picture of it and import it into Instapath, and then you can be able to cut what you drew. And that's in beta too, which is super awesome. But anything that you can create what's called an SVG file or a DWX. I think it's DWX, like a draw file, an Adobe draw file. Those are the two that you're shooting for. So you just need like drawn lines. And then if you import that into your CAM, then you can choose like what depths, what lines go and things like that. So you can say, like the eyes of my baby Yoda need to be inset, like not as deep as the outside edge. So my baby Yoda gets cut out, so it's like using all that stuff can be in easel or in SolidWorks or whatever your G code generator is.
And
But when you're actually
G-code
designing, that needs to be in an SVG. And you can also do that, obviously, in SolidWorks or Fusion, too. You can design straight in there for your design. So I like Fusion a lot. That's what I use.
Yeah, I
mostly use it for 3D printing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the next one. Like I said, since I do a lot of woodwork, I've been trying to do better about just building everything in pieces in SketchUp, and then being able to lay all those things out flat and come up with cut sheets. But it's all very manual process. They don't really have any great automation to it unless you buy the full thing. So I think
like
SolidWorks.
Fusion's like $30 a month, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's the one I was looking at next.
Yeah. And I know that's the one that a lot of people in the community use to make their G-code projects and stuff. Because it has that like monthly subscription. So like SolidWorks is like a chunk. I think I don't know if they have a monthly subscription for SolidWorks.
SolidWorks does. They also have the, like, basically if you buy 2 years worth at one time, you get it like your full license, or you can buy the subscription.
Oh, okay.
The funny thing is, I actually have SolidWorks on my work computer. My work provides it, but it's not in my job. Like, that's not what I do. So it's just kind of funny. I have an engineering machine that actually has it. I keep debating actually starting to run it and play with it, try that one out, but I don't know how their license server. Yeah, I don't know how their license server works.
I mean, there's lots of good YouTube videos that will like kind of show you the basics and stuff. I mean, because those programs can be kind of intimidating when you jump in.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of buttons and features and stuff like that that you can move around with. So, yeah, the design part is the toughest and it takes the longest because once you kind of figure that out, and then because you can go and you can cut something, but then you realize, oh, it wasn't my machine's fault. It wasn't my frame's fault. It was the design's fault. You know, like, or I didn't put the G code to be cut deep enough, and there's all kinds of different, problem solving things that you can go through. But design, because it's so time consuming to be able to make stuff, that's what takes the longest for you to make something. But it's also the most rewarding when you make something from scratch.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, you convinced me. I actually loaded it, and it does look like I connect and get a license from our company. So.
Hey, there you go. Why not? Yeah, you got it.
And if you're not using like a CAD program to pull together a design, ideally you want to output it as a vector graphic, right?
Yes. So that's the either a drawing file, like an Adobe drawing file, DXW, I think, or I don't remember the name of that one, or SVG. SVG works great. So anything that is SVG, you can even like Google like whatever you want, an SVG next to it, and then download an SVG graphic and then import that into Easel or your other program, and then you have the SVG of that. So like that's how I'm making my you can see my little Rebel Alliance thing behind me. I'm making my coasters as Christmas gifts. I'm cutting those out. I haven't had a chance to cut one in the past week, but that's how I've been making them, and is like taking those SVG files and then importing them into Easel.
That's how I did my fork too.
Oh, sweet.
I just found that, and imported in Easel, and it was pretty straightforward. So
yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and then you can usually change the different lines too. So like each one of the lines, you can make them different depths and stuff like that. And you can put tabs in there too, so it doesn't fall out, and to make sure that like it's attached and things like that. So
cool.
For sure.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate your time, Drew. And
right,
I'm going to try to do some more work over the holiday, and I'm guessing I'm going to be back next week. So
sounds good. I'll be here.
Right. Thanks again.
You bet. See you, Trevor.
Well, thanks for the call.
Yeah, you bet. So, Nathaniel, yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, like I said, send us an email or hop in next week, and we'll get you going.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Have a good holidays. See ya.
You too. Bye.